Welcome back to Michigan Sports Media Network. And as always, I am here with our Tigers reporter, Brad Thompson, and our Red Wings reporter, James Gullett. What we're all really itching to talk about. So far, well, not today, mostly today, I guess I should say. The Lions re-signed Levi Ownuzurike to a 1 year, $5.5 million deal, which I personally love. I love that move. Definitely cheaper than I thought it would be. I don't love that it's on a 1 year deal, but at the same time, you ain't getting him for that cheap for multiple seasons. And this is obviously one of those Brad Holmes prove it deals that he loves to give out to guys who have high potential but have injury concerns or whatever the case. And Levi's coming off that back injury, so a lot of teams, from what I've heard, a lot of teams were very worried about that, and they didn't want to give him much money or a long-term deal. So he just kind of decided, I'd rather go back to Detroit if I got to prove it for a year because maybe I can win a Super Bowl. And then, with that being said, I do believe Levi, I saw a stat today. He was in the top five in pressure rate among all free agent players. And that's just kind of crazy because he's a guy we kind of played out of position a lot this year because of our injuries. He played a lot of, five tech or out, which he's more of a three tech, I think. He could play five, but I just don't personally love putting him there. And I mean, the tape kind of speaks for itself. He wasn't that great there this year. So with that being said, I wonder what he could have done if we played him in position all year with Hutch, with Aleem, with Smith, with all these guys we had. I think he would even had a better year, and at that point probably would have outpriced himself from us. So I love the signing. It seems like he kind of took a bit of a hometown discount. But then also we signed Grant Stuard, the linebacker from Indianapolis. He is more of a depth piece, of course. The money hasn't even been, reported yet. But it's a 1 year fully guaranteed deal, and that I would assume is probably less than $2 million. So it's not going to really hurt us much in the cap space world by any means. But with that being said, he is a depth player, but he's been pretty damn good in the times that he's played. Colts fans, which shout out to James for this one. Colts fans have apparently been saying, he throws his body around and just doesn't give a shit. Plays with his hair on fire. Something I saw from the Lions special team coordinator, Dave, I think it's Dave Phipp. He said, that's where I got the hair on fire quote. He said Stuart is one of his favorite players, like, period. He said the way that he plays, his aggression, his physicality is just amazing, which tells me it's a special team signing for the most part, and he'll play some rotational linebacker at best, which I'm totally fine with. That sounds great to me. But that will be, I think, our fourth special team specific player that we've signed. And that's just a little confusing. So I just don't. We'll see. I'm sure somebody's going to get cut. I would assume it's going to be one of the guys that we re-signed, just mainly because we gave this guy a fully guaranteed contract. But with that being said, he did have a 69.4 overall grade on PFF and a 70.1, I believe, run D grade and something in the 68s in terms of pass defense. So he's still a solid player when he does play. But moving on from that, let's talk about some players that are available that could help us out on the pass rush front. Some pass rushers that are left to sign. There's some solid players, nobody crazy, but some decent guys still available. We have young guys like Aziz Ojulari. We have Josh Uche, who's I think 27. And then we have some older guys, like Von Miller and Zadarius Smith and Matt Judon and Calais Campbell. And then we have some, more of rotational guys for sure that will really only be rotational, like Charles Omenihu and Dennis Gardeck. I still think there's a lot of solid pass rushers available, though. And if we sign two of them to like under $10 million each, I'll be happy with that. I'll take two for the price of one, especially when a guy like DeMarcus Lawrence just got $14 million per year over the next three. He's one guy I really liked for that same amount of money, but 1 year. 3 years, and I think they gave him like 25 million of it guaranteed. That's too much for a guy that's going to be 35 by the end of the contract you gave him. So hopefully Brad Holmes has a plan. I'm sure he's got some tricks up his sleeve to go and get us some pass rushers. He's obviously been, trying to make things happen. And speaking of that, we did also sign Roy Lopez, the defensive tackle from Arizona, who I think is way better than a lot of people are making him sound. He's not like an elite, game wrecker by any means. He's not going to come in and be Aaron Donald for us. But what he will be is a very good rotational defensive tackle. I would say pass rusher, but I think he's pretty good against the run as well. He's more of a nose, but I think he could play anywhere from a 0 to a 3, maybe a 4. I don't know. I don't think I'd really put him at a 4 or a 5, but he might be able to. But he's a good pass rusher, is aggressive with his hands and his feet. He never stops moving. He gets doubled all the time. I was watching film on him earlier, and it seemed like he got doubled after the snap every play. And one play I really loved that he made was he had a strip sack on Josh Allen, and basically he got doubled immediately, right? He's hand fighting, he's trying to drop through, and then the guard has to go help on the defensive end, the pass rusher. And what happened is he goes to help, and Roy Lopez notices he's one-on-one and just beats his man, gets to Josh Allen, knocks the ball away. Now, that was his only sack on the season, so small sample size, but I really liked what I saw from that. And then moving on to the big news of the day for the Lions is Kevin Zeitler has signed with the Titans on a 1-year, $9 million deal. Absolute gut wrencher, heartbreaker. I've said on this podcast, I think it was Monday, I was saying I'm 100% for sure Zeitler's coming back. Like I was 100% gung ho. Then as the days kind of went by, the hours went by, I'm sure some of you guys saw it on Twitter. I was kind of like, I'm not feeling too confident anymore. Seems like Zeitler might not come back. And then a lot of people were, replying like, oh, he's just testing the market. This is just Brad's MO. He's going to let him test the market, see what he can get. He didn't come back, guys. He gone. Zeitler is out of town. Unfortunately for us and him, I would say he signed with Tennessee, who's probably not going to be very good this year, which is likely going to be his last season. Which kind of makes me wonder, was it the money? Did we not offer him enough money? I did see he's got some family in Nashville, so that could play a part in it too. But it's a big loss. But there are some guys who I think could maybe not replace him to the same level, but be pretty good players for us. Brandon Scherf, Tevin Jenkins, and Will Hernandez are kind of my top 3 free agents right now available at guard. And obviously the draft, we have pretty decent interior O-line throughout the first 3 rounds. I would say after that, it gets a little iffy. There's some guys like Jared Wilson that I'm a fan of. Couple guys later on that you could get that might be solid, but you definitely need to sign a vet because they're not going to start year 1. But with that being said, we still have some, time to go. It's only the second day of free agency actually being open. So we'll just kind of see how this goes. Hopefully Brad has a plan to shore up the guard spot. I just don't feel comfortable trotting out Graham Glasgow and Christian Mahogany. I like them. They're good players, but just don't feel comfortable with that on a Super Bowl team. And then last but not least, safety depth. Okay, we lost Ife Melifonwu to the Miami Dolphins on a 1-year, $4 million contract. I think we're going to draft one, okay? The safety class isn't like amazing. It's not going to blow your mind or anything, but there's some guys you could get in the 4th or 5th round that could take that iffy role. And there's some guys, left in free agency too. So we'll kind of see how that goes. I know Brad's got a plan. I just know he does. I know he's making calls. He's working shit out with his guys. He's like, okay, what are we doing here? What are we doing there? And unfortunately for us, guys are falling off the board as it's happening. So hopefully we'll make it at least. If we don't sign an edge, we better sign a guard and vice versa. Like that's how I feel right now. If you don't sign either, we're fucking ourselves in the draft because we do not have 2 first-round picks anymore. We don't have the top top capital to give up to do anything. So we have the 28th overall pick, and then we have a 2nd round pick, and then we have a 3rd round compensatory pick. So that's end of the 3rd round, basically a 4th rounder. We got to make some moves in free agency if we want to win the Super Bowl. And I'm not saying we need to go make splashes, but I'm saying depth is key, as we saw with the injuries last time. So with that being said, James, I will pass it over to you. It looks like we may have lost Brad, unfortunately, but floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Chase. A lot to unpack there. I want to start with Ownuzurike, and I don't want to go too far in depth because I am literally in the middle of writing an article that you guys can go check out at mysportsmedia.com after this. Actually, by the time this airs, it'll be out. However, this is courtesy of Benjamin Sloak. I destroyed his name, but sorry. He pointed out on X today that these are numbers in terms of pressure rate among defensive tackles that have signed new contracts this free agency period. Milton Williams has a pressure rate of 12.5. Tershawn Wharton has a pressure rate of 8.2. Javon Kinlaw has a pressure rate of 6.9. And Levi Onwuzurike has a pressure rate of 9.7. So out of those four, Onwuzurike is a good percent and a half above second, who is Wharton. Now, their new contracts. Williams signed for 26 million per year at his 12.5 pressure rate. Wharton signed his deal at 18 million per year for his 8.2 pressure rate. And Kinlaw signed 15 million per season at a 6.9 pressure rate, which brings me back to Onwuzurike with his 9.7 pressure rate and only 5.5 million. So in terms of bang for your buck, he is only less than 3% behind Milton Williams, but 21 or 20.5 million per year less than Williams in terms of payroll. So Brad Holmes does it again. Onwuzurike had a terrible back injury in college. I have talked to several Lions fans who kind of given up on him. I know some people say he had a good year last year, but that's 1 out of 3 or whatever. That was the first year he was healthy. Like he is a damn good football player, and his best year was the Lions' defensive line's worst year. So without Hutch, without McNeil, without Kaminsky, without these depth pieces, without Davenport, he still had his best year. So going back to what you said in terms of and what we've talked about in past podcasts, if you give him McNeil, Hutch, and then insert rookie, free agent, whoever, or even just Davenport if he's healthy, he's not going to demand the double teams at least right away. And he is going to hopefully feast. He gave us a glimpse of it. And I feel like the 1 year deal was Onwuzurike's idea because I think he knows he's going to have a good year. And I think he knows he's going to get paid bank in the following off season. So he might be 5.5 million this year, but he might be a $20 million guy next year. So I wanted to point out those numbers with the contract. It's a low risk. I mean, even if something happens to him, just kind of like the Davenport, which I wanted to talk about last podcast, but we were over on our time. I know a lot of people are down on Davenport. I understand. I personally was not going to have him back just because I assumed he was going to get more than that. But if I'm not mistaken, his base salary is only 1.5 million, and with incentives, it is up to 4.75. So even if he hits all of his incentives, even if he hits all of that stuff, he's still less than 5 million. And I'm preaching constantly about it. For the right price, I'll take about almost anyone, and that is definitely the right price, and or at least a price I have no issues with. So even though I wasn't the biggest fan when I heard he came back, once I saw the deal, that's a steal. You can't go wrong with that. Brad Holmes, per usual, is cooking. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on, like you said, is the safety depth. Potentially lack thereof since we lost Melon Fonru. I know we obviously have Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch. Branch can play and has played that nickel position fairly often, which opens up when Melifonwu got healthy. Branch moved from safety to nickel, so that way Melifonwu could play. Um, my big thing, and once again, maybe it's just tea leaves, maybe it's destiny, maybe I'm just full of crap. But the compensatory pick we got for Aaron Glenn is pick 102. That has been announced. That's what pick we are getting for him. Kirby Joseph was pick 97 in his draft. So, I mean, I realize it's 5 picks later, but we can get a safety right around that pick 100 mark. That's pretty damn good. So, I'm not going to uh, lose my confidence, lose my faith, or even freak out about it. I was worried that the Lions were not being as aggressive as I wanted them to be. And then when I kind of just sat back, looked at the big picture, looked at past off seasons, how they conducted themselves, and looked at how they're doing it this year, it's the same MO. It's the same thing. I remember being upset with them last off season that they weren't super aggressive in free agency, and it worked out pretty damn well. I know we didn't win a playoff game and everyone's upset, but if we didn't have the injuries, I mean, I understand if wishes were fishes, the world would be an ocean. But we could have had, and we did have a special season. We even with the injuries, we were 15-2, guys. Like, calm down, let Brett Holmes do his thing. He clearly knows what he's doing. I don't know if you, the viewer, or you, Jace, have seen the Inside the Den episode they just released last night about the coaching staff. After watching that, I have so much faith in this front office, this franchise, this coaching staff. Everyone is on the same page. Everyone talks about the not only player chemistry but the coaching chemistry, and I think we're in for another damn good show and another damn good season. I know the Vikings and the Bears have been spending and just buying players left and right. We don't have to do that because we're better than them. They have to do drastic decision makings like that to catch up to us. All we have to do is get healthy, have this draft class come in, get acclimated to the team, and go to work.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I mean, a lot of people, like you said, are kind of freaking out right now because pass rushers are falling off the board and everything. But like you said, we just need to get healthy, bring in some guys with the draft. I still think we need to obviously sign depth in free agency, but we don't need to go make splashes. Like the most splashy thing that I want right now is a Von Miller for like a 1 year, 12 million or something like that. And that's just because that's a guy who can be across from Hutch on that 3rd and 12, who can rush the damn passer. Like that's all I'm asking for at this point. And maybe get a veteran guard. And another thing I didn't bring up was wide receiver 3. We still need to go and get another wide receiver. So I also wouldn't be surprised if we do that in the draft as well, because it's not the deepest draft at wide receiver, but you can find somebody in the 4th or 5th round that can, fill that Tim Patrick role and, just kind of make it work there. Um,